Right. All right, I am Daniel Hubling, the president of the Beacon Hill Area Neighborhood Association. Thank you all for coming out tonight. And we've got several different areas we're going to cover this evening. Very first thing is adoption of the agenda. So everyone's got a copy of that. Are there any last amendments or changes you would like to see to the agenda before we really get going? Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as it stands?
So moved.
Okay. Second? Good. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And it is adopted. Next, approval of the general meeting minutes from our last meeting on June 13th. I'm sure you all checked that out in the newsletter we got this weekend. Any points of contention on that? So, do I have a motion to accept the minutes as they stand? Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. So, housekeeping out of the way. One thing I should mention before that, we do have a guest tonight. Trish DeBerry is here. She's a candidate for county judge. Per our bylaws, our rules of meeting, we don't allow candidates to speak to the assembly, just to keep it, basically to keep it fair. I'm going to give equal time to everybody, but not giving anybody time. But we do recognize they're here. If you'd like to speak to her after the meeting, please do. Okay. Okay, back to the business. The Neighbors Helping Neighbors Forum. Cynthia, did you have anything you wanted to say about that?
Beacon Hill is the one that started the Neighbor Helping Neighbor initiative with Sean McCain and Chris Spilker. We took it out to the world and we had this amazing forum. So now we're going to bring it back to Beacon Hill and we're starting a committee and we're going to work on how to do this on an extremely local level. And there are people in our neighborhoods who are already doing all kinds of kind things through the Benevolence Committee. Michiga's doing its amazing work on the food pantry. How can we combine this and help our more vulnerable neighbors? So we're getting that started.
Thank you. And just continuing on that theme, as you said, it started here, took it out, and now we're coming back to Neighbors Helping Neighbors in the neighborhood. We want to make it an official committee of the association. And my thought is that if it is an official committee, they should have some working funds. So I myself would like to make a motion that we transfer some monies from the general fund to an initial amount for the.
Question, how much?
That's for you all to decide. My thought was, say, $500, but that's up for debate.
Question, do we know what level it be funded? And Neighbors Helping Neighbors, Mike? Well, everybody knows what it is, but
Sure. Would Sean or Cynthia like to talk more about what the committee would actually do?
Well, that's up to us. I mean, the point is during that storm, we helped with the guidance of the Impact Guild. We got help from Alta Vista, but we were able to help 185 neighbors, get them water, get them food. I mean, it was almost miraculous how the stuff kept showing up late at night when we thought we were finished. We did wellness checks to just about everybody in the neighborhood, but we realized that it doesn't take a storm or COVID to understand that a lot of our neighbors are struggling. And they're struggling with things like, we're dealing with displacement. They're being priced out of their houses or their apartments. And, there's food issues. There's all kinds of issues. And it's partly in partnership with animal care. It's about housing. It's about elder care. How many of our elders are struggling and we don't know what to do about that? And we don't want to do more harm than good. And so anybody that's interested, we'll come together and we'll talk about what we're going to do. I mean, the neighborhood, we're used to doing it on the cheap. I mean, I think we put this citywide forum on like ridiculously cheap. We beg, borrow, but we don't steal. So, I'm hoping that if we have the money, I mean, I didn't ask for it. This is generosity on the neighborhood's part. Like, we'll find good uses for it when that moment arrives. I'm not looking to spend money, but I do want us to start thinking about how to get resources to our neighbors and follow up with them on those resources.
Mind if I attend it?
Yeah, please.
During the Snowmageddon, there were a couple of particular needs that were common that emerged during that time. One of those was a need for have storage available, it may make sense to stash some bottled water in advance of events like that. We also have some very peculiar plumbing fixtures in the neighborhood. The tools for shutting off some of these valves are not common, so if we get a few tools that are relevant to what plumbing emergencies might emerge during those times, that might also be a good place to invest a little bit of funding.
I'm not necessarily opposed to this, but I don't like taking a vote when a vote hasn't been announced to the general population, because that disenfranchises people who may have a stake in the decision but don't know it's being voted on. I would suggest that this be brought up as an issue for voting in the next meeting, and meanwhile it be sent out to the neighborhood for, you know, so they'll know that this is something that will be
Fair
voted
enough.
on.
Okay, Mr. Table. Jared.
One more, so everybody, so I would expect that the rules for all committees apply, such as money spent that's over $300 will need to be approved by the board.
Sure, I mean, that's part of the bylaws, so
Yeah.
they wouldn't exist outside of those bylaws.
And we don't spend money unless we're given receipts. I mean, it's, you spend the money, you give the receipt to the treasurer, and then it's reimbursed. We don't just hand out money and say, go spend.
I was at the Neighbor Helping Neighbor Forum, and most of what it was about was getting people connected together so that it was an information gathering thing. And I think that's the real focus of it, is to put the information out there so that people can get the services where they're available, from the food bank, from the other things. Not so much to actually provide all those things, but rather to connect people so that they can take advantage of the different facilities and things that are already existing and coordinate those benefits. Not so much that we're going to be spending money on providing them ourselves.
Does anyone else have any questions about the committee or what its function would be? Or any other comments about funding? I am holding off on that vote, but I would like to ask, what do you all think would be a reasonable starting fund? When we bring it back, we can come back with some, putting out some figure.
Your proposal is at
5 sounds okay. Okay. So that's how we'll announce it. That can still be changed. I'm not saying it's going to be locked in, but we'll say that that's what we're going to propose. Okay?
Yeah, and then you're going to get your act together as to what you formulate the idea of the committee is.
Well, we're still, Rose, that's going to be in flux because it's about getting people together and all of us sort of coming up. It's not like one person saying this is what it's going to be. But we have a basis of a plan together, thanks to Sean and Chris.
Good. All right. Another committee, committee that comes and goes. We're coming up on board elections again in October. Still seems normally awful to be here in a minute. So the first step there, per the bylaws, we have to announce a nominations committee at the August meeting. Mark is chairing that nominations committee, and Kim and I are the rest of it. But anybody else who wants to be on a nominations committee, please do, because basically the nominations committee just tries to drum up potential candidates. I certainly don't have enough ideas on who those potential candidates would be, so please give me more ideas on who might be a candidate to be on the board. Okay.
And if you're at all interested in serving in the neighborhood, please contact me. My contact information is in the newsletter, and it's usually a committee of at least 3 that nominate. So if you'd like to be on that nominating committee as well, nominate yourself.
Right. Yeah. Next up to that is, so we have the nominations committee. We try to beat the bushes. Come next month, September's meeting, we're supposed to present the slate that we have at that point. It's not locked in. Someone can show up at the October meeting if they have attended a meeting in the following year and say, I want to be on the slate, I want to be part of this election. That is fine. You can come at the last minute as long as you have that qualifying, what's the word that wants? Qualification. Yeah. And having come to a meeting within the last year. So thought to it.
And the October meeting doesn't count.
Right. But it is something, if you know neighbors that you think would be good on board, just do let them know that they have to come to September's meeting or else they can't run. So they may have been involved in lots of ways, but not been to a meeting in the last year or attended via Zoom, but they need to come to one meeting prior to the meeting.
So next month is their last chance to be eligible. Next up, this is going to be pretty big, but there's a resident of Monte Vista who would like to put together a crime summit of several midtown neighborhoods: Beacon Hill, Alta Vista, Tobin Hills, I think River Road, and Monte Vista, of course. So basically, at this point, we're just angling for some representatives from the neighborhood who might sit in on discussions on how to put that together, what it would look like. Basically, a planning committee, I guess, or a steering committee. If you or anyone you know would be interested in being on that planning or steering committee, let us know. Right now, frankly, not much is happening. I don't know, Anissa could tell me differently. I don't know if any of the other neighborhoods have really signed on yet or not.
We've done some initial planning within our office and with SAPD, and I think we're going to do like a larger planning meeting with someone from each of the neighborhood associations to kind of make sure we're meeting the needs of what everyone wants. So I think if, one or two people want to volunteer for that planning meeting, we'll probably do that at the beginning of September. It won't be like a big public meeting. It's going to be like a planning committee for the larger event. That'd be great.
Okay, with those items out of the way, we're going to turn it over to Officer Melissa, our SAFFE Officer, for some of the report.
Good evening, I'm Officer Hinojosa, your new safety officer for Beacon Hill. I have some big shoes to fill with Officer Masali. But just wanted to give you some updates on certain things that I've been doing with a lot of the help of the community, as well as the president. The little convenience store, they're off of Blanco from Cotton Academy. Got some information about some illegal activity there, possible gambling. I went in there to kind of pretend I was going to buy something, and I walked out and I did see it. So I contacted our UCs, our undercover, and they got an arrest. They seized 3 motherboards, 1 8-liner, about $700 in cash was seized. There was an arrest made for keeping a gambling place, gambling promotion, and possession of gambling devices. So appreciate everybody who helped on that. Been doing my frequent patrol buys around the area, hitting some of the troubled residences. I'm working with code. It's in the works with code compliance right now, so I'm just waiting on them. And then a lot of these abandoned, not so much abandoned, but they're leaving the vehicles out for storage in the street, especially on some of the narrow streets. Can't do that. So I've been issuing not so much parking citations, but they're called green stickers, which is a parking ordinance, and it gives us 24 hours. We can impound that vehicle. So we've been doing a lot of that as well, but a lot of the neighbors have been cooperating as well. Other than that, sir, that's all I have. There's nothing really major that I know of. I know there was a couple of burglaries last month, as far as they were breaking into these vacant homes or homes for sale and stealing washers and dryers. Well, we followed up on that, and we found, luckily we had good plates. Unfortunately, those plates were stolen and put on the exact same van. So our property crimes detectives will be working on that. Other than that, I don't have any other major issues from here, unless anybody has anything to add, anything, suggestions on more patrol by certain areas. I do kind of educate people as I'm driving. I'll see them with the front doors open, wide open, and I kind of wait. Nobody comes out, and I'm like, hey, you left your door open. No, I'm sorry. Vehicle doors are being left open and trunks accidentally. So I'm trying to stay on top of that while I'm doing patrol boys as well.
Does anyone have any questions?
What's an 8-liner?
8-liner. It's I guess it's one of those machines that have the 8 lines. I'm assuming. It's a slot machine.
Gotcha.
Yes, I'm not a gambling person, and I just saw what I saw, and okay, that's not right. And make a long story short, I saw a gentleman. I guess he was an employee. He was. What grabbed my attention is that I was walking around and I heard a bunch of change falling, and I ran to like a cash and I looked, and he was like, "Do you know where the goo gun is?" And I'm trying to take off these parking stickers that I'm not going to tow, and he's like, and I left and started making my contacts. So everything was recorded. So kind of put my camera right to him and all the coins, but.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir.
So welcome.
Thank you.
First of all, have you discussed with Officer Maciel and Ruby about the 919 Capitol and where the fire was?
923.
923.
That's
They're
in
all about the same.
dangerous premises
Right.
is on that one.
Right.
I found out about that fire because it happened overnight. I've arrested the occupant who has a criminal trespass warning there, which is a relative of the owner. I've arrested numerous times. He's a homeless individual, and we've had several cleanups already at that location, actually both locations. The thing is that he ends up coming out later on that night because I work mornings, and unless I find him there on the property, I can't arrest him. So when I do see him off property, I kind of pray that he has a warrant, at least just to keep him away, but he doesn't.
So, I don't think I want to open up a can of worms right now, but I think we should have a meeting with maybe the community garden people, the neighbors there, because it's not just him. There are multiple people. We've been calling for 5 years. Nothing has changed. Even with it burned, they now have a table and chairs out on the slab.
I saw that on the way over.
And they've been there. If you look at the records, they've been called at least 3 times in the last 2 days. We're always told exactly what you told us. I guess the biggest question I have is, can you not arrest other people that are trespassing on that dangerous premises?
They have to be warned. They have to have a warning as far as being arrested. Now, if they're there, yeah.
Right, and so they're there, but they're never there when the drive-bys happen. And we reported fires there, we reported campfires there, we reported people dumping there, we reported health hazards there for 5 years.
Right.
And no one seems to be able to get there at the time when they're there.
Right.
And I also would like to we'll talk about it at a different.
Yes, sir. But as far as the dumping, since I've been on with SAFFE, there's been 4, maybe 5 cleanups already. The issue always comes back, you know.
Just a drop in the bucket for police.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to add to what he's saying. Yeah, it's been going on for years, and I see all the homeless. They're up and down the street, especially the guy with a basket, bringing junk back and forth. I don't know if they're stealing it or what, you know. And like he said, what's the use of calling the police and they don't show up? They don't show up, or they show up centuries later and nothing gets done. And then there's another problem with the house on Fulton next to the park. That house in the corner, their problems, not the blue house, the other house, their problems, and they have loads of cars there.
On Capitol and Fulton?
Yes, it's, I forgot to bring the address with me, but it's obvious which house it is. They're nothing but troublemakers, and they have somebody in back of them that they crisscross They have people driving up in the alley, and you see them handing stuff to each other. And what are the other things? The graffiti too. They have friends that drive up, and they'll be sitting out there, and you'll see the car leave, and there'll be graffiti on the wall. And that problem has been going on. But I do see all the homeless, and we have new ones, and then school's gonna start, so the new homies are gonna start up. That's what I call homeless,
Right.
you know?
So the thing about the homeless individuals, or the homelessness, is that we take DHS out there to offer them services. They don't have to take it. Maybe 98% say no. Now, what crime are they committing? They're free to roam wherever they want, as long as they're not in your property.
But
Okay?
to dump,
I'm sorry?
to dump junk,
Well, when we get there, by the time we get there, they're mostly gone, okay? And I don't have the answer to that. We do patrol buys. I'll schedule patrol buys at certain areas, and when the patrolman gets it, you know, it's, you know, pretty much, you know,
well,
how
another
the
thing,
time.
right there on Fulton, the other side of the railroad tracks, going to the bridge, they've been hanging out down there, and that creek has never ever looked the way it does now. And there's nothing but a bunch of trash down there, and graffiti all over the wall, and we never had that.
Okay, I'll contact the code, not the code officer, but they have outreach. An outreach has to be done first, and then they'll schedule the cleanup within days or the next week later. Now, are they gonna come back? Probably, you know.
But there has to be something, because they're up and down.
A lot of them don't wanna stand here for help because there's rules.
I understand. I was trying to be kind, and I was trying to help them out and help a couple, you know, and I didn't realize what I was doing myself, but I was trying to help them to get them off the street. But then I find out later that one of the boys, he has a filthy rich mom in Houston. I'm like, what's up with you? You know,
Yes.
why do you want to live like this?
Okay, I'm sorry.
For discrepancy, she said, yes, when the patrols show up, everybody scatters, but can we get some frequency at night? Because there's a lot of activity at night.
I came from patrol, fortunately, I've been on safe since January. Before that, 14 and a half years, I was on patrol downtown. And I'm not making excuses, they get busy. Okay, something major happens, especially the fine silver curve right here in 5 Points. That's gonna tie up pretty much 2 sections for 8 hours or more. It just depends. Every night's different. But
What about parks department? Do they do any patrols or?
the park police,
Yeah.
they handle strictly the parks and they help out downtown. Yeah, but I mean, as far as the patrol buys, they'll eventually go by, but it's up to, you know, on the stack of calls that they get. I mean, I'll do all the patrol buys during the day, but I depend on the other shifts to do it, you know. But it's hard. It's really hard.
It's mainly at night.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Really bad. There has to be a solution.
I don't know. I can't answer that. You know. Sir.
May I, actually, I wanted to speak, we understand, you know, because we've experienced this, like I said, for at least 5 years. I would like the general, and the board, the general meeting to look at I would volunteer to put together some sort of plan, at least for one maybe solution, with the way the current system is set up, and discuss with the council person this situation and possibly come up with a solution. But I don't want to just go off and do it on my own.
Do you want to tell
Without-
us what you have in mind, or
Yeah, I think
just briefly?
number one, just briefly, the system is not working. So we know what the system is, and I think part of this can be solved because that property that all of the people are bringing stuff to, going through it and then taking it to be fenced, is private property. And it is adjacent to the park, and I would like to see if we can work with the city to make it part of the park by them taking over that property.
Yeah, it currently went up for sale.
Right. And so that's kind of in a nutshell, the start of that. I think there should be some things that go with it that the city should promise us if it becomes part of the park. So.
We could set up a meeting with the councilman about that, but I will tell you, I did ask the Parks Department about that, and they, at this time, have said they are not interested in purchasing the property.
Well, it's not, the park doesn't have to purchase it. It's still part of the city. And once the city has it, they can give it to the park. Because if the park doesn't have the money for it, maybe somebody else can come up with the money for it. But one of the biggest problems is you've got at least 3 city entities involved in maybe 4 departments. So you've got the daytime SAFFE officers, you've got the nighttime officers, you've got the Parks Department, you've got SAWS, you've got a portion of it that is part of the city, but it's not recognized because it's a paper street, and these guys are not dumb. They move from one to the other, and then you've got the situation with Ramon, I think is that the Habitat for Humanity guy?
That's the outreach specialist.
The outreach specialist.
Ramon is with DHS, he's the outreach specialist.
Right. So you've got all of these departments, and they have not come up with a plan to solve any of this. And one way of starting the conversation is to consolidate those departments and give people the authority to do something. Because right now, you don't have the authority to arrest somebody without giving them a warning first that's on the property. You can't do something about someone who's lighting fires because you're not going by there at night. So you see what I'm saying? There's all of these departments need to be consolidated, or at least their instructions need to be consolidated.
Right, on the fires, I saw the key cards there. Patrol went out, but when they get there, you know, actually it was one of the code officers that, she was one of the individuals that called it in. There was numerous calls there for this last fire. Of course, when the officers show up, he's gone, and you know, she's giving them the description, which way he ran. He usually runs out through the tracks.
Sure.
They couldn't find him, but it's one to me it's one of those situations where it's very annoying to me because I feel like our hands are tied, and I really get frustrated with it. You know, if somebody calls, they're like, hey, he's on the property, I get there, he's a block away, I can't arrest him now because he's not on the property. So I run him, hopefully he has a warrant, and he doesn't, so I can't do anything else about it, you know. And I kind of encourage him, like, hey, did you follow my advice? Did you follow Ramon's advice about getting help? Nope.
We get that. We already know that. So if you're going to continue to do the same thing over and over, that's, what's that saying? Yeah, the definition of insanity. And, you know, we had a neighbor there. We reported a lady walking into their house. We saw it, he saw it from the garden, yet no one would arrest her, even though we said she went in the house. And so until those kinds of things are worked out, we're just gonna keep doing the same things. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people tired of calling in and being told call 311, being told to call, because you know nothing's going to happen, because the person's gonna be gone, because they're not on the certificate of not being allowed to be there. I forget what it's called. So anyway, I think we've talked enough about this, and we will get together later.
Jerry, one thing that might help is to put in a budget request for it, because in January I did ask Parks and I also asked Public Works and I also asked our real estate team. And there has to be a department that has a budget to purchase it. No one has had the budget for that in this fiscal year. The new fiscal year starts October 1st, and the budget process is getting underway, which I was going to talk about that later, but that might be a reasonable ask, that if you put in either Parks or Public Works budget. Public Works, because I know that there's a drainage situation there and it could be used as an outlet. So it could be both a Public Works drainage solution and part of the linear park. So one or both, one or the other or both might be able to collaborate on that, but we have to get money in the budget for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Hinojosa. Next, we have a presentation from James Mendoza, who's with the San Antonio Office of Emergency Management.
Thanks. I'm setting my timer. He told me I have 10 minutes. So there it goes. And thank you. I'm going to use this stand. I didn't bring my singing voice, but I just think this is cool. How's that? Can you hear me? Yep. All right, great. So good afternoon, good evening. My name is James Mendoza. I'm an Assistant Emergency Manager for the City of San Antonio. Thanks for having this. I was talking to the officer earlier about, the organizations that I've been to and HOAs that I talk to on a regular basis, and this one seems pretty squared away, so congratulations on that. It's been a while since I've spoken with this HOA, so right off the bat, if you wanted me to come back to talk about any array of topics that we have in the Office of Emergency Management, from planning, exercises, training, Homeland Security, some of the things that we have going on, I'd be more than happy to do that. How to build a kit, how to prepare for any kind of emergencies, myself or someone from my team will come out. So again, thanks for having us. And today I'm here to talk about something very specific, a project that we've been given by leadership post-winter storm. And someone mentioned that earlier, so thank you. The idea is called a resilience hub. So I'm going to flip through some of these really quickly just to give you an idea of where we're going with this. So since there's been a lot of shockers in the community lately, right? In the last couple of years, COVID, and we're in the middle of one of the hottest summers almost ever. We're the driest. Almost, and then that winter storm, and then the power outages. So the survey that was up earlier will ask you what you're concerned about. So if you get a second, take the survey, let us know what hazards you're concerned about. And I can tell you that this morning, a lot of the respondents were still concerned about power outages, which is, I think, is fair. We're in the middle of a sort of a high demand power situation. It's super hot out there. It just rained, so I started sweating as I was walking in here. So take that survey. I'll put it up here in a little bit. Since the winter storm and COVID, we've been asked to do more of this. So do more community preparedness, do more citizen preparedness, emergency planning at the community level. Before the pandemic, we were doing this quite a bit. I don't know if some of you have ever attended the citizen preparedness workshop that we've had at the Emergency Operations Center on the south side. We've had 10 of those. They were very successful. People loved it. It's about a half-day event that we do training and presentations on various emergency management topics. We're going to have it again this year, September 24th. So if you want to send your president or vice president or a few of you who want to attend. My email will be out there on the end of this presentation. Let me know. We'll reserve a slot for you. It's a great time. You'll get a T-shirt. You'll get a tour of the EOC down there, and I think you'd have a good time. We are also spending a lot of time on vulnerable population preparedness, so the most vulnerable in the community. We've done a lot of outreach. We're trying to reach out to people who may not have access to the internet or may not have mobile devices. So that's another hot topic. As I said, we're currently in the middle of a heat wave. 5 seconds later, it's going to be cold, right? It's Texas. So we're going to be worried about winter weather soon. And I think we're also kind of traumatized by the winter storm. So this is where I'm getting at. The resilience hubs idea, let me skip over that just for time. So the resilience hubs idea came forward through leadership after the winter storm, as we were recovering and learning some of the lessons from that response and how we managed that catastrophic situation. We all suffered. Wouldn't it be cool to have a place to go to and depend on for resources, for basic medical needs, food and water, and that had a redundant source of power? So the idea of this hub concept came up, and we've been asked to do public outreach and find out what you think about this. So it's nothing more than a familiar and trusted area in the community. So it could be a church, a civic center, a community center, a senior center, a library. All of these places serve as really good places that the community is familiar with, except that they may not have backup power. So we've been giving some funding to provide these resilience hubs to the community, and a lot of that funding is going to go to backup power generators and such. Most of the time, and if you've heard of this concept, you'll know that most of the time these serve the community 99% of the time as a regular, everyday, either a senior center or a library, but then that shocker happens. So the disaster, the emergency happens, and we'll be able to flip the switch and turn these into resilience hubs. Also, I would like to do regular programming at these centers so that people understand what it is and where they can go to. So again, it's nothing more than a place that people can trust and go to. I think ultimately these resilience hubs or centers will bring a lot of value to your community and can be sort of a crown jewel of the neighborhood and community, and really a place that people can use. So what are we going to do? What can we provide? This is just a basic introduction to what we can provide. Basic supplies, obviously heating and cooling if it was a heat wave or a winter storm, shelter from a severe weather situation, access to power. I have teens in the house, so all they care about is charging their devices and their iPads and their iPhones. During the storm, we were charging stuff in my car in the driveway. I know many of us were. So charging, a community meeting location, all these locations would have Wi-Fi and really just serve as a place for resources during an emergency. I've worked a lot of presidentially declared disasters in my career with the city, and looking for a disaster recovery center in the community is a real pain. Everybody wants it in their district, and everybody wants it to be this place or that place. Once we have resilience hubs established, we can easily turn them into recovery centers so that people can get information that they need. I've got 3 minutes. This is your gold standard, so it's actually pretty simple concept. Charging stations, it should be walkable, you should be able to ride your bike to it. That's why the idea earlier, this is my third presentation today on this. So earlier, someone said, well, elementary schools are perfect for that because people know how to get there, they're walkable, they're in the neighborhood, and I think that's great. We haven't selected elementary schools or schools during this phase of this process, but there's potential there. So if you take the survey, let us know what you think. Eventually there could be redundant power sources like solar in addition to the generator. And people really like the idea of a community garden and green space in these locations. So, you know, that's something that we're going to take into consideration. These are the 4 that we've already selected. There are only 4. I've read a lot of the responses already. They're like, only 4? This is a big city. What are you doing? These are the 4 pilot hubs that we've selected. And they're great locations, spread out mostly throughout the city. And I think when we begin operating them and this idea takes off, people will want to establish hubs in their community, and this idea will catch on and grow. But for now, these are the 4 that we've selected as our pilots. Southside Lines in District 3, great location, spacious, beautiful area, easy to get to. Norwood in District 5. The Northeast Senior Center up in District 10 is our largest facility. And then Garza Community Center in District 7. All of these are familiar, they're trusted, they provide 100 to 200 meals a day for people already. So we thought they would make great resilience hubs. So that's it. Our community outreach phase is almost over. Thank you very much for putting that in your newsletter. This is really exciting for me and for my team. These small things is what really excites us. So thank you. And thanks for sharing the link. I think my staff told me this morning that your council district is high in the respondents on our survey. So thanks again for that. Next week, we'll be going to the Public Safety Committee meeting and sharing what we found out in the community, and then get more guidance. So maybe we'll start. Maybe we'll get more guidance on opening other centers or cataloging some of the locations that people have suggested in our survey or in our presentations. So at this time, I'll take any questions that you have. And again, if I could come out again and talk about anything, just let me know. Yes, ma'am.
Have you thought about how to get people there? So if you have elders or if we have a snowstorm and people don't have four-wheel drive.
Sure.
I mean, you don't have to explain to me now, Senator Chan, but you know, I hope that you consider how you're going to get people to those.
Sure. It's the number one question that comes up at all of these presentations. The short answer is yes. We have good contacts and partnerships in the community, and the snowstorm, the pandemic, a lot of the cooling centers, all of these experiences that we have is giving us a lot of good experience to set up transportation in the future. So yes. Yes, ma'am.
Are you thinking only one per city council district?
They certainly want one per district. So that when you can imagine when we presented that, it was like, where's mine? Right? I know D2 really wants one. And you know, all of them want one. So yes, the idea is to have one in each council district eventually. But you know, the sky's the limit. We presented this idea to a large group of faith-based organizations, and you can imagine they all want to be a resilience hub. They already are, in a sense. The only thing that they're missing is a redundant source of power. So I think in the long run, we will have this concept set in place in this community. A lot of people want to help. Yes, sir.
With non-city owned organizations or locations being resilience hubs, isn't there some kind of weirdness on how that gets funded?
It's definitely a collaboration. So the first phase that we're in now is 100% city-owned, city-operated resilience hubs. Once we get guidance on proceeding with other locations, maybe there's some collaboration or some cooperative agreement there. But for now, we're keeping it simple. City-owned facilities, we're going to put the generator in, we're going to staff it, we're going to make sure that they're running as our pilot. So yeah, good question. This is great.
Thank you.
No one's mad. Oh, I spoke to you. Yes,
I got one question. It's a good program. Looks good. To me, I just don't agree with the school. Y'all could not have them around the schools.
Sure.
And maybe a community center, or civic center, or something else. But
totally fair. Yeah.
I don't think the school, in my opinion, would be that's where that guy's off, you know.
Yeah, schools
Unless
are-
they'll have something from like 7 to 12 at night that the kids are not there at
That's-
all, then.
That's absolutely right, yeah. Yeah, schools, I would love to do schools. Some communities are doing that. Austin is primarily looking at schools for their hubs. I agree with you. They've got a lot going on in schools. I don't want to disrupt school day-to-day operations, but you know, it is a good idea. But for now, we're looking at locations like the ones I showed you. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Share that on the survey too. Take the survey and yeah. Any other questions? All right, great. Again, any other topic in emergency preparedness, let me know. We'll come back. I'll send staff out here. And then I also want to give a quick shout out to my boss down back there, Chief Matt Lodge, currently the emergency manager for the city of San Antonio. And, so any of the hard questions go to him when I unplug. So thank you very much. And then I'll leave this up for a minute.
That QR code is also in the newsletter.
Okay, now we're going to transition to talking about the linear park. We're entering the next phase, phase 4, and we're going to talk several things we might do there, but the big topic to discuss is potential dog park. And Jerry's going to have some information, pictures about that.
Well, while this is thinking and see if it's going to connect, as all of you know, the last bond passed, and out of that bond money, we were given $500,000 for phase 4 of our linear park. And so I've asked Alma Nunez and Tony Forsage also to join us. And Alma has been with us working, so Alma is the development services person from the city, and Tony is a landscape architect who is the project manager for the Parks Department. He's also a forester, so both of them have been involved. Alma from the start, and if y'all don't know, we completed the first phase of Linear Park in 2013. So we have our 10-year anniversary coming up, and I think we should have a big party for it. And it's continued to be a success, and we've continued to grow by our council persons including us in the bonds each time to add various items. So last year, or last phase 3, we talked about a dog park, but we couldn't fit all the money. We ended up getting a nice playground. We're still putting in trees. It's not quite complete. We still have like 80 trees to be installed in the park after we get through this summer. So out of that $500,000, we will actually be spending, or be able to spend, we're estimating based on historic working with bond money from the city, between $400,000 and $425,000. So the last time, we didn't really bring up the dog park because we weren't going to be able to afford it. It's a big chunk of money out of that $400,000 to $425,000. And right off the bat, without having any design architects drawing anything yet, they have been hired? No. Not yet, so there's not been an landscape architect even hired yet.
They've been identified, and
Right.
we're working with them, and they have a history with working on bond projects with the parks.
Right.
Dunaway.
We presume it to be Dunaway. So anyway, that hasn't been drawn, but estimating a dog park, depending on materials and things like that, and depending on if we want a dog park, it's going to probably run between $200,000 and $300,000 for a dog park. And so the purpose of this meeting is to, number one, kind of get feedback from the community of whether we want a dog park in the linear park. Daniel and I have done some canvassing of the close people to, this is where the proposed dog park would be. This is Rosewood, if you can't see it. This is Linwood here. And almost all dog parks have a large and small dog section. So those two sections would fit in there. Yeah, and we got all good feedback from the people that we were able to talk to. And surprising to me is that for the first time on anything we've done since I've been involved in the neighborhood association, I've gotten 5 emails about the dog park, mostly from new residents, but all of them saying they're really excited and are, for having a dog park. What we are also trying to determine, we were sent by Tony and Alma 3 dog parks around the city. One was the Fox Park up off of Houseman Road, which is a brand new one. New Territories, which is on the northwest side, far northwest side, and then Kingsborough on the south side. So we went and looked at them, saw the differences between them. I can show you some differences. And let's see if I can. So the major differences and why we're talking about differences is because of the cost. So on top of this, we also have to consider other things that people have been suggesting and things that we have already had on our list of wish list to add to the park. So one of them was another component or element to the playground. Another one was getting electricity for where we have been having movie nights. And along with that, we've talked about having some sort of shelter for having additional events in that location. Let's see what else is on my list. We've had suggestions of people that want to put in a mini disc golf set there. And let's go down the list here. So what we did was, the 3 different parks are all larger than ours except for maybe New Territories. We're at about half an acre, which is the minimum, about the minimum of getting a good dog park, and for the dogs mostly. So we need to consider that when we look at New Territories. And we have also going to have added costs because of this situation here is an alley. And right now, we're not allowed by CPS to cross the alley, so that has to be left open. So basically, we are building 2 dog parks, a large dog park and a small dog park. So that kind of increases because almost all of these other ones have something that is like, if I can find the picture.
While you find that, Jerry, so
yeah,
you'll share a fence line and
right,
water.
And water. So the small and dogs, you only have to have 1 water.
And it's the infrastructure associated with that too. It's not just the cost of the fountain.
Right, right. And
the trenching,
saws,
yes, exactly.
We don't have water on those locations, so we have to.
You increase the size of your pipe, so.
Shared fencing,
So if you look at that fence, that's one of the types of fences, and then you've got this type of fence that has wood, and it looks nicer, but it also costs more compared to an all metal fence. So there's another view of the wooden one.
The metal ones are really nice in a setting like this, an urban setting, and just to emphasize the aesthetic quality that you might not be aware is these metal brace fences, you have a tendency to look through them on site, and so you don't have a fenced-in dog park. It really makes the site breathe, if you will. You look through it from the inside and the out.
And you also have it, the example in your
park basketball court. So if you guys go by there, I'm sure you're down. That same type of fence, that's what we're talking about.
Another added, I guess not added cost, you have to consider all of this has to be ADA compliance. So that adds to it too. There were things like agility structures or structures for like agility that have your dogs run over ramps and through hoops and things like that.
Well, then you mentioned ADA, Jerry, so we can do minimal things to get people in the park who use walkers or wheelchairs. So it's one of the, when Jerry talks about, $200,000 to $300,000, we spent much more at Maverick, a downtown park. If y'all haven't had a chance to visit that dog park, it's really worth it. But we want to just keep y'all focused in what we thought was a good scale for the neighborhood and trying to keep your budget in mind. But we can limit the amount of paving to get people in. So there's some real economical, clean designs that we could utilize in order to maximize the budget, but still get you a very nice dog park.
I don't see bring the pictures of Kingsborough. They have concrete paving all through, a big structure and things like that. But it's huge. It's like a lot larger than ours.
For
So,
Kingsborough, sorry to interrupt. For Kingsborough, we had an existing sidewalk
yeah.
leading to the track that's there. So we just off of that sidewalk we attached the park.
One.
Yeah, so
Sure.
it was minimal, but you still need that accessibility for every park that we have.
The idea is we want to get a sidewalk and a landing with a bench, and for someone to not have to step off into the lawn or the wood fiber, wood chips, and be able to have access to a bench, to the doggy dispenser station. But we can do that with, minimal paving.
right, and there'll be seating. So, as the committee consists of Daniel. I'm on the committee. Elizabeth Collier, Ray Cantu. Am I missing Rose Cohen Brown? There you go, Rose Cohen Brown. And so our job is to parse out all of these different costs and decide on the other things too, so that we can fall within budget. But number one, because this is a $200,000 to $300,000, we thought we would bring it to the general meeting, get some feedback from y'all, put it in the newsletter, all of that kind of thing. So at this point, any questions?
I have a question. You mentioned electrical and shelter, which I think are good ideas. But it's either or. It's dog park. If we did the dog park, we
No,
do
see,
the other thing.
From every phase, we've been trying to get everything we can. Every phase we want it all. But we want to do the dog park right and make sure it's safe, et cetera, and set up for maximum safety for the people and the dogs.
And be able to prioritize for us that, dog park is number one, then if there's money left over, we want electric, and then.
Right.
I will say this, just to be, realistic. It's unlikely we would get a significant shade structure and a dog park for this budget. We might get a small cantilever shade structure, but I don't think something like you're talking about, Jerry, for the community.
You'd be surprised. Well, because. So, yes, we're going to try to we're definitely going to make sure we get electricity. Go ahead.
As I said, part of the process, I was on the last phase too, and part of the process was once we had a pretty firm list of our wants, and we threw that at the city, and they came back and like, okay, this would cost essentially this would cost this. It's a little more complicated than that, but it gave us sort of line item costing, pricing, and then we could like, oh, well, we can't afford that, then that has to come off the list. And dog park was one of those things, but we need to gather what those wants are first and throw it down.
Exactly. We would like to have a set of 3 to 5 priorities that we can price. We don't want to waste some of the soft money from the budget to pay a designer to design something that ultimately the community didn't really prioritize.
Right.
Do we get to see the design prior to it? Is that also going to be community input?
No, not really.
Sure, I don't see why not. Because here's the process right now is if we say, yes, everyone wants to, the majority want a dog park, we're gonna give that to them. They're gonna hire Dunaway. And we'll also have a meeting before anything's drawn up, and we're gonna give them these other things, electric, and including the dog park. Then they'll draw it up with a hopefully very close draft to the final. And I don't know why we can't show y'all. I mean, we're all sitting around.
Well, and other than amenities that can come in future phases, like extra lighting, shade
Right.
structures,
Right.
the site is really dictating the design, by and large. Jerry mentioned the alleyway, so we're gonna have two separate parks, not a shared one. We're gonna wanna minimize the pavement, so we think we've identified a good place to come off of the existing trail. We want the small dog park to be a fraction of the size of the larger. So really, we kind of already had some really good ideas about what the design is going to look like.
So they don't know this yet, but I think I've come up with an idea that we can combine that dog park and not have to have two separate. That we, you know, maybe Anissa will be able to talk to CPS about a different way of doing it.
One of the things that has concerned me about the linear park is when the city will come out and tidy up the decomposed granite trails, and they look nice for about a month and a half, and then they get overgrown to the point where in portions of the park, you can't tell there's a trail there at all.
Yeah.
And that just feels like wasted money. So I wonder if there's any thought about how to make those trails usable for a longer period of time.
So I'll tell you my thinking on that. So first of all, I'll tell you the original thinking on it was that's how we save money. Because on phase one, no, the city would not allow decomposed granite. The city would not allow pug mill. They wanted asphalt. And guess what? Asphalt's expensive to put just that section there. So we went with decomposed granite with it. And my feeling is, once it's grown over, people are gonna walk where they want to through the park, because you know where the park is, and pretty soon there will be trails. That's just my thing, that's my thinking on it, but, you know, we can discuss that. That's why we're here, to have people,
I think we were
throw that out.
looking for a sustainable and an item that could give, that was less maintenance for Parks and Rec. And the asphalt at the time makes sense. But of course, you know, we've been in most of these parks selecting concrete. And that, in the long run, is less expensive to maintain. Of course, it's pretty expensive as well. So in general, when you want to identify all the items for the park and you want to maximize that, you're looking for the main components and try to minimize on some of these costs, and at the time makes sense.
And in the park's defense, the maintenance on decomposed granite trails is huge, and we've gotten away from using chemicals, because the easy thing to do would be to have a crew come by once every 2 months and spray that trail.
Sure.
But we don't want to do that anymore, and so we have to bring physical equipment out here, drag those trails. So we really default to concrete when we can these days.
And dragging is just like mowing it, it comes back.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add that, having been on the last phases committee and on this committee, what you learn is that things cost so much more than you think they will. That money goes so quickly. So you can have a lot of wants, but what the practical situation is how many amenities do you want, and how much do you want to upgrade? If you upgrade, then you don't get something. So you have to really consider what things cost. It's very, very important.
Sherry, can I interject something that we didn't leave, that we left out of the conversation? I think the good news is we're going to maximize your bond dollars by coming in after the fact with our tree mitigation fund and pay for irrigation and tree planting in the dog park. So that's going to be very nice to have irrigated trees that won't be coming out of your budget. So that'll be a separate phase after the dog park's constructed.
Blake?
That answered about 40% of my question, but the idea between like what's an upfront cost versus what's an ongoing maintenance cost and like how that gets handled. What I'm hearing is it's okay to have like a little, like just to go real wide on your upfront costs and get like a bunch of little things, because then the ongoing maintenance costs will pick that up after the fact whenever the city sees, oh, this needs attention, this needs attention, and this needs attention. So I'm doing that.
I'd say yes to that. I understand what you mean. And so along that line, once the phase 4 is complete and there is a dog park, the maintenance is on the parks. Except for, of course, people picking up after their own dogs.
I'm sure you looked into it, but, you know, taking the trails with my bicycle and stuff through the town, you know, there are some shelters that, you know, seem like they're fairly low cost because they're, you know, not elaborate construction, but they still have a, you know, awning over them and stuff, and I'm sure you guys looked into that. How much would something like that cost?
So as an example, where the kiddie playground is on the corner of Capitol and Fulton, not Fulton, Capitol and Gramercy, it's one of the sale types.
Yeah.
That was about $35,000 10 years ago, 10 or 11 years ago. And we have looked into it, and I've talked to Alma a little bit about it, but we haven't given them an actual size. So if we come up with a size, we come up with a type. One of the types that Alma's talking about is that single, so it comes over. It's just like a single pipe, and then a sail on top. The cost is probably as much for the concrete as it is for the pipe and the sail. We would have the electricity, per your email the other day about don't want it blocking anything. The movie night stuff would sit in front of that because that's removable, but you would have the electric somewhere mounted and locked up, you know, on that, somewhere around the structure.
So it sounds like that's a priority for the community.
The electric's a priority, and you know, because of summer times and sun in San Antonio, shades important. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I hear everyone asking for shade, and I know we're talking about tree plantings as well. What's the budget from the tree mitigation fund for trees, and what species are we talking about at what maturity?
And when I say the tree mitigation fund, that comes from the Unified Development Code, money that developers pay in lieu of dedicating parkland. I would want to defer an answer to your question tonight only because our urban foresters, Ross Hosea, would really need to weigh in on what the budget would be. But it will be sufficient to, you know, provide irrigation on both sides of the dog park and put bubblers on the trees.
So, and that's in addition to trees that we will be requesting for the rest of the park. So,
in fact, we're not touching this current parcel in the current phase of planting.
So we've still got 80 trees and shrubs that will be going in from phase 3. So they started planting, and then this summer hit, and they shut that down because we don't want to lose trees. We've also got, and all the trees from phase 3 came out of the mitigation fund. We did not take any money out of the bond, and we got close to 100. Plus, we have approximately 18 large diameter trees that are going to be planted, hopefully the fall, from phase 3. And when I say large diameter, we're talking 6 inches usually considered. They've got to bring in, you know, forklifts and stuff because they're in such huge. It's not you just take them off a truck and plant them like they are now. And you know, Ross, Hosea, and our neighborhood, and I forget the lady's name that gives out trees and stuff. Ruby? Ruby. They work really well with our neighborhood, and they have bent over backwards to continue to get us trees. And down the road, we're even talking about a fruit orchard. So don't hold me to that, though. But they have been working, and they're excited about that, too.
I was just gonna say, since it is such a big chunk of the money, the dog park, like, to me, it makes sense to allocate that first and then see if it's a priority. Like, do you feel like that's been the consensus in the neighborhood, that it's the number one priority? Or is that part of what you're trying to see tonight?
That's what we're trying to see.
Well, I have no dogs, but I'm like, yes, we need a dog park. So that's my.
I have not gotten any negatives.
In the newsletter, it mentioned that it was the number 4.
Last on phase 3.
Okay.
Sorry, that's my improper
So it's
writing.
the number 1 of this.
This
phase.
year, right.
Okay.
So it was number 4 on the list from last year. No, it was trees, playground. What was the third one? I've already forgotten.
Does anyone have?
We have the exercise stations.
Yes, the exercise stations.
Does anyone think going the dog park route is a bad idea? Would rather not us?
I much rather have something where the community can get together, like have barbecues, have picnics. Is there such a high demand or a large percentage of our residents that have dogs versus us having like a movie night or a barbecue or a picnic? Picnic we've been having, it's in the middle of the sun. It'd be nice to have a covered structure where we can get together. Maybe if families want to throw a private party, they can rent it out. Something like that for the people. That's my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. It's a good thought. Anyone else?
Raise your hand if you're a dog person.
Where's that cat?
I like both. I know it's gonna cost.
Well, and Jerry, I mentioned too, over that.
Try to get some numbers on what that would be
So
like.
if you want to have a shelter, what node, you would have to pick a node.
It's
You
the
want
same
that
place
at
as
the
Ellsbury.
playground or at that area that's
Ellsbury,
you're talking
yeah.
about? It's-
We did have a good turnout when we did have the pop parade, and a lot of people were saying that they wish they had a safer area for their dogs, because there are a lot of dogs running around. So something that is, closed where they can have their dogs unleashed. And secondly, we kind of do already have that part where we have the movie night where they have those tables, and people can easily bring up their easy ups if they want to bring, their family for picnics.
Yeah, when we had the pop parade, there was a spot under the trees and everything.
And we brought 2 easy ups, and it was very open and easy to put them there.
But we can ask about some pricing on different size stuff, so we have some idea of what we
Well, and I will say, just looking at recreational statistics, I mean, I won't quote the actual statistic, but the number of American households that have dogs is huge. It's the majority. I was going to mention, Jerry, we sort of identified Public Works and the Parks Department, Beacon Hill's new bond phase project as being one of the first rollouts. So it's potentially one of the first of maybe 3 or 4 2022 bond projects. But the ball is sort of in y'all's court at this point to give us direction.
Right.
If we did move forward with the dog park, just some aesthetic questions of the couple types of things there, with just the metal fences versus the wood trim fences. What are your thoughts there?
Which one's gonna last longer?
The metal one.
I think if y'all decide on the dog park, give us the opportunity to present you with, as I said earlier, some economical designs that will be nice, but not overly elaborate, so that we can maybe spend some of that budget on other amenities.
If you
We'll
recall,
give you some ideas, and you can respond to those.
if you recall in the third phase, we had a dog park that was right next to the basketball court that we identified, and we did design that. But because of funding and people thought that it was just too small to accommodate both the large and the small, we did away with that. And so I don't know if it's not a priority, we'd like for it to be a priority, but if it's not a priority and you'd rather spend funds elsewhere, a smaller, less substantial area would be that one. And I don't know, that's something that parks would like, but, there is that option.
Go ahead, Elizabeth. I'm sorry, so understand, you were saying that there were, in phase 3, there were drawings to put it next to the basketball.
Right.
Before we decided the funding was not gonna work out, that it would be more to go to the playground versus that.
Okay.
At a certain point, we said like, oh no, the math's not working out, we need to get rid of it.
Fine.
It was a potential thing for be near there's a much smaller one that was going to be near the basketball court, but that got axed pretty early on, really.
And I think it was really presented as a conceptual idea, because pragmatically, you don't want the dog park in that parcel. It's just not big enough. You need, in a dog park, you need to be able to throw frisbees.
A big part of why they were talking about it there is that there's already a water run.
That's what
So that would have kept the cost down.
Yeah.
Where we're thinking, well, it's much bigger and I think more suitable, we will have to do a water run possibly too, and that is a big part of the expense.
So really, the money would be going to paving, benches, and water. Fencing and water.
Well, in a lot of, there's some hidden costs that I'm sure most of you are aware of. Permitting, we'll have to pay the landscape architect, potentially have a civil engineer involved, so there's a lot of sort of behind the scenes costs, I would say.
And the impact fees.
Yes, your fencing and your paving and your water fountain.
10% contingency.
Just so you know, I'm actually all in favor of a dog park, both the large and small, even though I will never have a dog to take there. And by the way, the studies show cats overtook dogs in popularity. And I agree we should leave it for them to come up with some ideas. Just like if I'm getting estimates for stuff on my house, give me some options and then I will take. So I would say, as you said, let them present some options.
There's going to be a lot of
and what they
commonalities.
cost, and you can cherry pick and figure it out from there.
Every dog park is going to have a handicap entrance with a vestibule to get the dog safely in there.
Right.
We'll probably only have 3-foot fencing on the small dog park, 5-foot fencing on the large. So a lot of this, as I say, will come together organically based upon the site itself.
Juan, if I heard right, you see you're gonna have 2 dog parks and like a thing in the middle?
Yes, because of the alley, you can't put those together, so you can't share the fencing.
So is there a way to just do one and see how that works out before we build the other one?
You actually have to have one for small dogs and large dogs. You don't want to put them together.
You wouldn't have to. I mean, that could be a community decision, but it's best practice to have separate facilities for the smaller dogs.
I think what he's saying is try to choose one of the other, big or small.
Can I see like trial one because, I mean, how about nobody really uses it, but
Well, then you're gonna have people bringing small dogs in.
To the dog parks, and I've seen a large dog attack a small dog and hurt it. So I would strongly recommend.
I didn't write about this, but
a separate.
if, have you thought about using the old design and on next to basketball?
Sorry.
No, it's good. I'm just gonna go ahead and ask my question, which is, if this is the idea for in phase 3 was to have one next to the dog park. From my understanding, that was a split design, like we're gonna have both the dog and the big and small dog next to the basketball goal. That got rolled out. But to this man's point, my thought would be, couldn't you have a large dog park next to the basketball goal, use one of the sides between the alleyway and Linwood as like a small dog park, and then use the other half of the alleyway for like
recreational use, meaning have shade, have a barbecue pit. Because in my mind, I'm seeing 3 spaces. So we have one next to the basketball court, and then these 2 can be divided into those 2 sections.
The one next to the basketball court was the initial conceptual.
But that was for 2 separate.
It would be for 2 separate, but it would be small, like the one you have at Travis Park.
Right, and to my point is, instead, couldn't you just use that as one large dog park? Then use one of these sections right here for the small dog park, and then use the other section for a recreational space.
Look at it. Well, yeah, you still got
There's
to
3 different spaces, right?
So there's 2.
Ultimately.
I
Well,
don't think
you're
anything
still
is
doing.
proposed by the basketball court at this point, right? That
Yes,
was-
we can. Short answer, yes, we can look at that. Nothing is written in stone.
Okay.
We can look at it. I would just mind, we went away from that both because of the cost and also it's small.
It would be a dog kennel, not
It's
a
like,
dog park.
it's like that area
You know,
right
we
there.
were trying to squeeze it in there because of the water line and
Yeah.
it's like ultimately, it wasn't really good.
So it's coming up on 8:30.
Yeah.
And I'd like to move maybe a special meeting just about the dog park for people particularly interested in design standards. And I'd also like to make a motion to dispense with the committee reports tonight. It's 8:30.
Yeah.
I don't know how the
I
rest
didn't
of
mean to
it
go
goes.
this long.
Oh, no, it's great.
But-
I mean,
but
I think
we're-
it's a really interesting,
we-
useful conversation.
We're not going to come back with a dog park meeting until we give them something to work on. And then we can come back and show, costs or the thing, maybe for next month.
Well, we could give you, an update on what we find with saws, and we need to release the designer to start designing,
Right.
and we need to start working with, for instance, our new annual fence contractor. Let's get some preliminary pricing for what the perimeter fencing would be. But we don't want to waste our contractor's time to give us those estimates until we're certain this is the direction we want to go.
Yeah, so
But we
number
can
one
come back
is
for an
that we
update.
want to have a dog park, basically. Whether it's 200,000 or 300,000.
I make a motion that we approve the funding for a dog park.
Is there a second on that? Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Who seconded it?
Okay, then.
Jonathan Watson.
All right, y'all.
Sorry for running so long, Oh, how about I move that we dispense with the committee reports since the time's run out. Second. All in favor?
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for coming.
So,
We will be in touch.
if you want to speak to Trish Berry, because we kept our hostess so long, we're going to probably start picking up the chairs. Feel free outside.
Sorry to share with you about the same
I did, but.
Hey, y'all, if you want to stick around for a minute, District 1 has a few announcements.
I'll keep it super short for you all.
Heads up, y'all.
So, D1, we're having a blood drive tomorrow afternoon from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. at 477 Spencer Lane. It's a contest between all the districts, so come and donate for District 1. We have a budget meeting on August 24th at 6:30 p.m. at the SAFFE Victory Center on Main. That is going to be a great time to come and talk about budget priorities. Eric Walsh is presenting to council this week the proposed budget for fiscal year 2023, but then there's going to be several meetings between then and September 15th when the budget is approved by council. So that will be your last opportunity really for a public meeting to get budget priorities in. So if you want a property purchase in your neighborhood to become part of your park, that's a great time to talk about it. You can also email me The last thing is the San Antonio Neighbors Together event, which is SAPD's event formerly known as National Night Out, is October 4th, but the registration deadline for neighborhoods is September 9th. I sent that link to your board previously, and I can send it again just as a reminder, but if y'all are gonna do a National Night Out, you'll have to get registered with that. That's really all I have. I have cards with me, so if you need my email address or phone number, come see me, and I will give it to you, and that's all I have right now.
Thanks, Elisa.
Thank you.